Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on the housing market in Rotterdam, navigating housing. Hopefully you can all see the screen. And please, if you can't hear me properly, drop a message or raise your hand in the webinar so that we know that there's something technically going wrong. If not, then I will proceed with the presentation. So, quick overview of what I'm going to discuss within this webinar. I'm going to discuss what housing in the Netherlands entails, types of housing that you could find on the housing market here, some practical info, what help to expect from us as a university and the international office, and also what help not to expect. Some information about registration and practical matters, and then we will close down with a Q&A, which will take quite some minutes. And I will ask you to save your questions for the last part of the webinar. So because some things that you might have questions about might be discussed within the presentation, so to prevent from overlap occurring. I will now proceed. So I'm Willemijn Dortel and I'm an international officer, and whilst I'm presenting and while you're seeing me, on the background there's my colleagues, and they will also later on help you answer your questions that you can pose us by using the chat box. Our intention is that you leave being aware of the Dutch housing market and how difficult it sometimes can be, but also that you know what steps to take in your process of applying for housing. First, I will start with some myth busters. So the dream of many students coming to the Netherlands is that you can get an old kennel house or an accommodation on campus and that housing is guaranteed. Well, most of you, and I think that's the reason why you signed up for this webinar, have already experienced that that's not the case. That's not the reality. Instead, most students in the Netherlands live in very basic accommodation. We call it studentico's, which is a Dutch word. We're saying a rather primitive location. Many students also commute. So Dutch students still live with their parents, at least a decent amount of them, which is something you can't obviously do since you're an international student. And the last thing that you should take into account is that there is a room shortage. The housing market is really tight at the moment, and it's very difficult for both nationals and internationals, students and non-students, to find housing. And in addition to that, the reserved accommodation we as a university offer is already taken by now. So that concerns SSH, Xeer, and Fiscalbana accommodations are still on our website but cannot be booked anymore. So that's important to keep in mind. On the bright side, we still have a partner that has some accommodation available, which is a partner of Room Plaza. And I would urge you to look as soon as possible into the opportunities still left here. In the screen, you can see how you can apply for them. What they offer is rooms in a shared apartment, either with friends or with people that you don't know yet. And you might think, like people that I don't know yet. Well, the website has a search button that can help you to find people that are like you, looking out for accommodation that you can't find.
Oh, hij zegt, oh, dat ben jij. Waarom doe je dat?
The good thing is that, I'm sorry, I'm hearing some noises that I don't want to hear, probably from people attending. I'll try to mute them. Let me see. Hopefully this works out. Okay, yes, I'm back, sorry. The good thing is that they are all well located, that they're fully furnished, and that we as a university looked into those accommodations so that we at least can guarantee that they are nice and decent. It's only for first year students. It's a full year rental period. So for exchange students, unfortunately, this is not a very useful option. Well, as I said, apply for these remaining spots as soon as possible. You go to the website of Room Plaza, you browse for Rotterdam and search period August 2019, so that concerns the academic year 2019-2020, and look out for those apartments that indicate thirsty apartments, and then you make an inquiry. So this is what is my first advice to give you with regards to the only reserved accommodation still being left. Then, beyond reserved housing, and this is actually most of the things that you should look into since all is gone, by law you have to be registered within 4 months after arrival. Sub-renting is allowed, but mind that you have to be registered after 4 months. If you find a spot that allows you to stay there for 3 months and it states that you can't be registered, you can take it, but you need to keep searching as soon as you enter that location, because after 4 months you need to be registered. This is sort of an average range of money that you should expect to pay for accommodation that you'll find in the Netherlands. Check always whether this price in or excludes utilities. Well, also for the amount of square meters that you can expect, this is like an average. It can be bigger, it can be smaller, but yeah, if you take this as a rough guideline, I think you should be fine. Some rooms allow for housing benefit, but be wary of the conditions. So housing benefit is something that you can apply for if you're renting on the free market, but whether you can apply for this depends on your income, the rental price, and some of the property characteristics. For example, you can look this up on the website of our government. The property should have a private door, it should have its own facilities, including a toilet, a bathroom, etc., etc. So these are the tiny terms and conditions that you have to look into before you apply, and otherwise your application will be refused by the government. Distance. We are a city, not a metropole, so I would say all neighborhoods in Rotterdam and also all surrounding villages are fairly well accessible if you consider the distance between the Erasmus University campus and those neighborhoods. Some you would have to travel a little bit longer, and that will also cause you to have some extra transport costs. But in general, you won't have outrageous distances to travel. And lastly, now I have to organize here something because I can't see my own screen. Safety. We are a city, but Rotterdam is a very safe city. There's no no-go areas. Of course, there are neighborhoods that are a little bit likable, I would say, than others. We have some neighborhoods with a little bit of more low-income populations, but in general, you can trust your own gut and common sense whilst being in the city, and then you should be fine. There's no places that you should avoid going to. I'll proceed. Don't expect things to be easy. The search won't be easy, and probably most of you experienced that already, but most students succeed in finding accommodation than students that fail. So that's at least like a heads up for your search process. The private market is open to anyone, but be prepared and realistic. So this is 3 options that you could find on the private market. Apartment and rental studios. Most students rent alone or together with a roommate, for example, via Room Plaza. You can also opt for a room in a student house. This is something that most Dutch students do. We have a culture of student houses, and then you go and apply, and probably you go to a meeting evening that you'll get to know your future roommates, and then people agree or refuse you as a new roommate. And then you have turnkey housing, which is such a thing as the student hotel. It's everything is provided, although everything is provided. Basically, turnkey is furnished, it's fully equipped, but it's mostly high-end housing, and you should anticipate quite high costs. So where do you start your search? Do it like the Dutch, that's my suggestion, because like Dutch students, there's no reserved accommodation left, so you should look on your own device. My first tip is described for Stadswonen Rotterdam. Stadswonen Rotterdam is a social housing provider and they have very good offers all around the city. The prices are decent, the rooms are of reasonable size. The only thing is that it works with a waiting list, so most likely you won't find accommodation straight away, but at least, for example, if you're going to study a full degree here, you'll have high chances of getting nice offers within the second or third year of your studies. Second tip, although SSH and FIS, the reserved accommodations from UR, are fully booked, you can also subscribe for the regular accommodation. So the reserved accommodation might be gone, but the SSH and FIS, like they also have regular housing for Dutch students, they also have still options left, potentially, for people that are searching autonomously on the private market. So also look out for accommodation that they still offer. You don't have a priority status here anymore since the reserved accommodation is gone. The three search together, Room Plaza, as I said, and here there's still some reserved spots left from Erasmus University. But other than that, like as for the non-reserved SSH and FIS accommodation, you can also apply and look out for accommodation beyond our reserved spots. Tip 4, look at Housing Anywhere, which is a platform that's initiated quite some time ago and well known all around the world, basically, by students that want to subrent their apartments. It has a safe deposit system, safe transaction system, and many of the houses you can also register at, some of them not, and mind my earlier comment on you having to have been registered after 4 months of stay. And join Facebook groups, and you can approach us for some tips and tricks on which Facebook groups to join. And then the 6th tip is get prepared for voting night, which is a very common thing in the Netherlands. It's the system actually we work with, that when you apply for a room in a certain student house, most likely the group of students that you want to live together with are going to ask you to come over and introduce yourself. I have a short video that I would like to show you to get an idea of what hospiteren exactly is.
During this meeting, you'll have the opportunity to see the room, the house, and meet the other residents. This is your chance to show them your best side and the sort of person and be as well. This is also the moment to ask yourself if these are the people you want to live with, and really every room that you use. We really need to continue to decide.
Okay, so this was a short video on what hospiteren is. Other tip I would like to give you, register at Stadswonen, like I earlier said, but they also have a first year system, basically stating that if you're below 23, you're a full degree student and you are registered at Stadswonen, you'll get priority for rooms available. So if you register until the 1st of September, you'll get a priority status applying for rooms that are offered between the 1st of July and the midst of October. So I think that's a very good chance for you to at least skip the row a little bit and get an extra chance to obtain housing at Stadswonen already in your first year. So, of course, many of you are disappointed that you won't have a spot in reserved accommodation. I think most of you won't have that by now, because otherwise you wouldn't be signing up for this webinar. But there's also some upsides about the private market. So in the reserved accommodation, you can only stay for 1 year. Private market, it's well possible that you can have a contract that lasts longer. Here you can see, like, you can furnish it to your own, according to your own taste. Sometimes you can sublet if you're going probably for exchange, and you can rent your apartment out to other people. Be very wary though of signing contracts, and always feel free to contact us whenever you need tips and advice. And well, if your contract is in Dutch, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad contract, but you need to get it checked properly, unless you have exiguous or excellent Dutch language skills, but otherwise we can just check it for you. Yeah? So a very important fact that you'll see here, I'll keep on emphasizing it, after 4 months you need to be registered at the City Hall. We can help you with this during our one-stop shops. Please check our website as well. And you need a rental contract to be registered. So always make sure that you ask your landlord to provide you with a rental contract that you can sign and that he or she can sign. Watch for these red flags. I'll just put them on the screen and you can read them for yourselves. These are just, you know, a few things that you should be wary of. And you can read them through, but I think the most important thing is that you should always trust your own gut. Like, if things seem too good to be true, they probably are. Always make sure you can have some sort of check that you can verify that the house actually exists. And be very, very careful with transferring money. Use your common sense here, but also feel free to approach us and help us and let us allow you to be of help. So here's what we can do. Oh, sorry, I think I have to move back because it went a little bit too fast, but I'm not quite sure how to do that. Well, I can move on to this slide later on when we're having a Q&A. So this is a map of Rotterdam. Probably also good if you're looking out from a distance and you want to sort of like navigate what a city is like, which neighborhoods are nice to live. Most students want to live in Kralingen because it's close to campus, and it's actually a very nice and quite historical area still. But there's much more areas in Rotterdam that you could look out for. Rotterdam West, the west of Rotterdam is currently like booming, upcoming, it's quite hipster, quite multicultural, but also the south of Rotterdam I can highly recommend to look into because it's increasingly popular. But still generally lower prices and larger rooms. So it actually might be your lucky chance to get a room in the south of Rotterdam, which used to be like the rough areas, but are currently like well livable. So how we can help and how we don't. We offer reserved housing, but by now that's gone, unfortunately. We have an email address, internationaloffice@ur.nl, where you can always reach us, and we provide language and legal tips. What we don't manage our own buildings, so we can't offer everybody a room, although we regret this. We won't post listings or sign you up for anything. You need to do things yourself. And we won't give full translation or legal advice, but we can at least assist you in getting to those people or getting in touch with those people that can help you and give the very basic advice. So please contact internationaloffice@ur.nl if you have any questions. And for those people who are probably not in this webinar, but that reserved accommodation via university housing@ur.nl is the email address to send questions about your rental contract at XIOR, SSH or Fiscalbanen. The final do's, watch our introduction video on the housing market website. I think that will be launched in the midst of this week. It's very insightful. Read our website from beginning to end, housing.ur.nl. Enroll as soon as possible at Stadswonen, especially since I mentioned that the first year pilot is still pending. Get involved with various housing platforms and participate in Facebook groups. And I think like a nice short list of all the platforms available is already on our website. Keep your eyes, ears and mind open. Don't rule out Rotterdam South, for example, because it's actually, despite the comments or suggestions that you might have gotten from other people, it's a nice area to live and it will greatly increase your chances of finding accommodation if you're open to those spots. Be aware that after 4 months, you need to be registered. This is not to scare you, but at least for you to have some realistic view on like what you can expect after you arrive here. And enjoy the search. Well, I think it's quite enjoyable in the end. As I said, most students succeed rather than fail in finding housing. So don't get too discouraged too early, and also don't be disappointed if you get refusals of your applications, because in the end, it's very likely that you will find something before the start of the academic year in September.